Hello and welcome to the Our Prenup Lawyer podcast, where you and I get to learn more about prenups as I interview professionals from the fields of family law, couples counseling, and wealth management. I'm your host, Libby Garabedian. Let's get started. The information provided in this podcast is prepared by Our Prenup Lawyer for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. The information is not intended to create an attorney-client relationship. This is not legal advice or a substitute for obtaining legal advice from an attorney. A person listening or watching should not rely upon it in any manner without engaging professional counsel. The podcast is intended to communicate general information and, because recorded, may not be current. On this episode of Our Prenup Lawyer podcast, I'm joined by Andrew Hatherley, a Certified Divorce Financial Analyst, founder of Wiser Divorce Solutions, and host of the Great Divorce podcast. Andrew helps people before, during, and after divorce navigate financial complexities with clarity and confidence. Having experienced the challenges of gray divorce firsthand, Andrew is committed to helping others avoid costly financial mistakes and reduce the emotional toll of divorce. He is trained in collaborative law and mediation and is the financial chair of the Amicable Divorce Network. Andrew recently contributed 3 chapters to the book Divorce Amicably, Your Roadmap to Resolution, and has written a financial guide to late life divorce, The Gray Divorce Phenomenon, How to Create Financial Independence After Mid-Late Life Divorce. Welcome, Andrew. Thank you for being on the podcast.
My pleasure, Libby. Pleased to be here.
Well, let's jump right in and talk about what you do as a Certified Divorce Financial Analyst.
Sure. Certified Divorce Financial Analyst essentially helps people with the financial aspects of their divorce. Now, it can happen in a number of different ways, and many different CDFAs, as we're called, work in specific niches, and work in various ways. But as a general overview, we can work typically as an advocate for a party going through divorce, and work with their attorney to bring our financial expertise to the case, because attorneys, as you know, are trained in the law. Therapists are trained in emotional regulation. Financial analysts are trained in finance. So we bring our particular specialty to the world of divorce and to the divorce team. Now, I mentioned we can work as an advocate, where we're working with the attorney and their client. We can also work as a neutral. So in many cases, couples will come to me and say, look, we get along fine. We just decided to separate, but we need help dividing our finances. Can you help us? And what I'll do is I'll look at the finances. I won't provide legal advice, but I work with many attorneys around the country, and then depending on where they are, I'll refer them to that particular attorney to draw up the legal paperwork. And of course, there are CDFAs who specialize in areas such as lifestyle analysis, forensics, working with particular demographics, such as myself. I host the Great Divorce podcast, and I typically work with people who are over 50, and in many cases over 60, going through divorce. So CDFAs, there's increasingly more of us, and the word is getting out in the divorce world about the work we do. And we're increasingly brought into cases, and that's a good thing, because I think it's very important that we have teams of specialists helping people as they go through divorce. And it can be surprisingly less expensive than just relying on an attorney.
Really? I didn't realize that.
Well, consider this, Libby. Let's say you've got an attorney who charges $500 an hour. It's going up to $250. So let's say I'm $250 an hour. So I'm half the hourly rate of an attorney. And if an attorney is delving into what is the separate component of a 401k, or what is the separate component of some rental real estate that a party's purchased, well, they could do the work, but A, that's not their expertise, and B, they'll charge $500 an hour to do it. Whereas someone such as myself doing the work, it is my expertise, and I'm charging half as much. So if the attorney's focusing on the legal work, I'm focusing on the financial, And we can bring in other professionals, such as therapists, who are certainly even less than 250 an hour typically. Don't ask me to help with the emotions of the divorce. I've got a little bit of experience at it, but I'm not an expert. I'm not a therapist, and I'm not a divorce coach. I'm not a lending professional, but or divorce real estate specialist. There are specialists in all these realms that can bring their expertise in the world of divorce at less cost than an attorney. Now, an attorney is necessary. It's a legal process, but don't have the attorney do all the work. Contract that out to people who can do it for less cost.
So having a comprehensive team can really streamline someone's divorce.
It can streamline it. More importantly, it can bring the proper expertise to the proper areas and ultimately not cost you more, cost you less, in fact.
Okay. So can you talk a little bit about Wiser Divorce Solutions and what resources you offer?
Sure. Now, Wiser Divorce Solutions is essentially my divorce consulting practice. So when I earned the CDFA designation, I created Wiser Divorce Solutions. And so Wiser Divorce Solutions essentially works with people before and during divorce. And so, as I mentioned, the various functions of a CDFA, well, that's what I'll do through Wiser Divorce Solutions. I've done neutral mediations. I've typically working as the CDFA for a party in divorce, in which I'm working closely with the attorney on the financials there. But as I say, sometimes it's mediation, and sometimes I'm contracted to do particular projects like tracing the separate interest in a piece of real estate, or helping the attorney determine what we should be asking for spousal support for the client, and that may require looking back over years of marital lifestyle. There's a lot of variety in the job, which I appreciate, but it's, as long as we're adding value, and I feel that we are definitely adding value as CDFAs to not only to the client but to the attorney and the other professionals in the case. So Wiser Divorce Solutions is actually my second business. My first business is as a financial advisor, and once again, I've been doing that for about 25, 26 years now. And my specialization in the financial niche is people over the age of 50 emerging from divorce. So whereas Wiser Divorce Solutions, I'm helping people before and during divorce, with my registered investment advisory firm, Transcend Retirement, I'm helping people after divorce. So hopefully before and during, we've achieved a good settlement that puts people on a solid footing for life after divorce. And then afterwards, of course, you've got a lot of logistics involved with respect to, account transfers and budgeting, for the life after divorce and investing. And some of my clients, weren't the ones who were experienced in that. And so with that arm, I help people, rebuild the financial foundation for, a meaningful life. And I put an emphasis on that too, because obviously, as you know, after divorce, typically people have suffered a financial setback. And women tend to suffer a greater financial setback, but men suffer financial setback too. Their net worth is typically cut in half and their standard of living declines. So there's some mental readjusting as well. And the people that I work with are typically approaching retirement or in retirement. And so quite often it's necessary to reframe our view of retirement and think about, what we had originally thought of retirement as maybe spending a lot of time at the beach or on the golf course. Maybe that's not the way we want to spend retirement. Maybe we want to continue working if we have to, but maybe reorienting our work to what our strengths are and to what our purpose is. Or maybe we work part-time, or maybe we find more joy and happiness in things that don't necessarily cost a lot of money. That doesn't mean that we can't rebuild financially, but often we find if we're doing some work that we enjoy, that we're making money at it. So there's a psychological component to rebuilding after after divorce as well. And so when I work with people as a financial advisor, I like to look at their life and what brings them meaning and happiness, and have their money serve those goals. And I find that for people in late life getting divorced, they're ready for a new beginning. They're ready to reset their life. They're ready to look at those dreams and goals that perhaps they might have put aside during the course of their marriage. So it's an approach that I think works well with this demographic.
Now, I want to touch on retirement in a minute, but I want to ask you, how have you seen divorce change over the course of your career?
I think over the course of, I would say my divorce career is probably about 10 years, going back to my personal divorce and my subsequent earning of the CDFA credential. And that's what got me into being a CDFA. Was I went through the experience. I was terribly unprepared for it. And I thought, okay, what can I do as a certified divorce financial advisor and a financial advisor to help prepare people for this, and help them learn from my experiences. So what have I seen over the past 10 years? I see a lot of divorce professionals and people going through divorce working to resolve their divorce outside of what I call the divorce industrial complex. When people think of getting divorced, they often think of lawyering up. And yes, I think an attorney is needed. And I've done a podcast on the dangers of trying to do divorce without an attorney. I think attorneys are needed, but not necessarily the type of attorney we see on TV shows like LA Law. I'm aging myself. It was probably before you were born. Um, um, or maybe the stereotype of the shark attorney. There are a lot of attorneys now who are fed up with that process, and they're seeking to work with people in a way that's much more settlement minded, resolution focused, amicable. And so I'm actually the financial chair of an organization called the Amicable Divorce Network. And this was founded 6 years ago. And this has become a very popular group of network, international, for attorneys, financial advisors, therapists, coaches, real estate related divorce professionals, all committed to doing divorce in a way that avoids that kind of antagonistic, litigious approach. And so that's been great. And of course, you mentioned earlier collaborative law. That's still there. Mediation, and with the podcast world, I've been doing my podcast, the Great Divorce Podcast, for 3 years now, and increasingly more people who are going through divorce are really getting educated. I mean, I'm impressed by the number of people who call me and say, "Hey, I've listened to so many episodes of your podcast. I'd like to, talk to you about my situation," which is great because they're talking to me about the finances of divorce. And, divorce is a legal process, but it's really about money. It's probably the largest financial transaction of your life. And people are finding me through the podcast and social media, and they're showing that willingness to get educated about the process, which is great because that's so very important. And when they speak to me, I get a good sense of, you need this type of attorney. And sometimes it may be a litigious attorney, particularly if their soon-to-be ex is involved in, nefarious activities or is abusive. Then, you may need a certain type of attorney. But in many cases, the settlement-minded attorney that you find through processes like the Amicable Divorce Network, and I forgot to mention Soul Agree, which is another mediation type process. You can, the settlement-minded attorneys are the people that these people should be talking to. And sometimes, you see these unfortunate cases where people start out settlement-minded and willing to mediate, but they they go to an attorney first, and they're not that type of attorney, and ultimately the process can get bogged down, and it can become contentious. So when people find me on the internet or through the podcast, I'm able to direct them to the type of attorney that I think would work well for them, and they're able to avoid some unnecessary litigation and stress, both emotionally and financially.
Great that you can refer people to the right professional that they need. And the Amicable Divorce Network, we had Tracy and Moore Grant on here a
Oh,
few
really?
episodes ago. Yeah, yeah. So that is a great resource too. And I'd love to hear your perspective on that as well. But I do want to ask you, when you're in the midst of a divorce, whether it's contentious and heated or it's going smoothly, how do you advise your client on how to move forward in their ability to support themselves and their family under these new circumstances?
Well, there has to be some hard conversations. You know, I think most people understand, some don't though, that divorce is going to see an inevitable decline in your lifestyle, at least initially. And we need to prepare for that. And so that discussion needs to be had, and it needs to be had. This is why I like the team approach and bringing people like um, therapists and counselors and coaches involved, because they can support that discussion that I'm having with the clients. And we're going to need to do some things that people don't like to do, like budgeting. And I always recommend putting together a net worth statement as well. And we're going to have to go over, certainly if alimony is going to be discussed, we're going to have to put a budget together, because we need to show the attorneys that there's a need for one party, or in another case, there may not be an ability to pay from the other party, because that's typically what alimony is all about. Is it considers one party's need, but it also considers the other party's ability to pay. So there have to be some hard conversations about budgeting, and we may need to do things like reduce that travel budget, for a year or two or a couple of years. Or instead of going on the ultra luxury cruise line, maybe we go on a more, moderately priced cruise line. Or shopping, or eating out at restaurants. Maybe we eat out at a fancy restaurant once a month as opposed to twice or three times a month. These are all, difficult conversations, because people typically don't want to hear this sort of thing. But a lot of people do have ultimately a good head on their shoulders, and realize that there's going to be some belt tightening. Now, I do like to take the positive approach as well. And I mentioned earlier about this kind of reassessing uh, work and retirement. And when I work with people going through divorce, because I'm also a financial advisor, when I'm working with people in that before and during stage, it's not just about getting to the settlement. It's about, what is your financial situation going to look like in terms of savings and retirement, for the next 20 years, because I'm dealing with people in their 50s and 60s, and they're getting divorced, they may be approaching retirement. So that's where we get into, some of the more lifestyle discussions. You know, if this divorce results in you having to either go back to the workforce or stay in the workforce a little bit longer, what can we do to kind of make it better in terms of readjusting how you're thinking about that? Because a lot of people think, I can't wait to quit. Okay, well, maybe you could work in a job where you're using some of your abilities, you're giving back to people, and you feel that you could continue in that job for a longer while than maybe you expected, and not feel terribly bad about it, and even feel good about it. I know personally, when I was going through my divorce, or before I went through my divorce, I thought, okay, I'm going to retire at 60, and I'm going to travel and play golf and live a life of leisure. Well, when I got divorced at 52, that was kind of a wrench was thrown into the machinery there. because the numbers didn't pan out. And initially, that was kind of depressing for me. But then when I thought, okay, maybe I can make my work a little bit more meaningful and add value to it for other people. And in that regards, maybe working longer will actually feel okay. And that's what happened. I ended up starting a podcast at age 59. I'm still doing it at age 62, and I see no reason to stop because the numbers show it's increasingly popular, and people. But more importantly, I'm getting phone calls from people who really are enjoying it and benefiting from it. I'm thinking, well, I don't want to stop this. This is actually doing good work. I'm doing good work here. How can we continue this? Now, I'm sure I'll probably slow down or retire at some point, but that's not in the near future now. And that's a complete contradiction to the way I was thinking, 10 years ago. It was all about how quick could I retire. But now, between my financial advisory practice and the divorce practice, I'm finding a lot of meaning in the work I'm doing. And this is something I like to share with people who may be kind of overcome or depressed because there's that ultimate, the financial situation's dropping after divorce. And of course, the other thing is, I like to tell people, we can build it back up again. Yes, you've suffered a setback. Life is full of setbacks, but we can rebuild. And like the $6 Million Man, another reference you probably don't get. uh, we can rebuild and grow and be better than ever before. So there's an element of positive psychology to the work that I do. It's not just numbers.
That's great, that career pivot you had, and that even though your plan for retirement, it ended up being different. Um, you have so many new opportunities and are able to help people through your own experiences.
So much of happiness I've found, and I'm not an expert, I'm not a psychologist, but I think unhappiness and depression is often rooted in what's going on, between your ears here. And the more you can get out of your own funk and look outwards and help others and find meaning in what you're doing, I think the more content you're going to be. It, Life's always not going to be lollipops and rainbows, but I think there's a level of contentment that's much higher when you're doing something productive and helping others. And I've even seen a term associated with it called helper's high. And I'm sure you've felt that. Anytime you go out of your way to do something and you don't expect anything back, maybe it's helping somebody with their uh, groceries, grocery store, helping someone carry something, holding a door open. Recently, I put up some drapes for my mother-in-law. I said I felt good about that. So sometimes we need to get out of our own head a little bit.
That's great. And how do you guide your clients to have that positive mindset when they're going through kind of a negative period in their life?
Yeah, it's not easy, but and I think it comes down to telling the truth. You can't sugarcoat things. You can just tell people the truth and say, yes, it's not going to be easy, but it's not going to be the end of the world either. And our minds often play tricks on us when we're going through divorce. I know when I went through my divorce, I for some reason I thought, oh no, I'm going to have to work till I'm 80. No, I was never going to have to work till I was 80 or pay spousal support till I was 80. These irrational fears kind of take over. And that's why it's important to have, team members who can give you confidence that things are going to be taken care of. So I like to think that I can help give people confidence in the financial realm, but there are marriage there are therapists focusing on people helping people go through divorce, can help people regulate their emotions through divorce, help them make better decisions. And once again, as I mentioned before, professionals in the realm of real estate, mortgage lending, if you have the right people and you feel you're taken care of, you're going to feel stronger and more confident that this is going to get done properly. And there are also, in the realm of positive psychology, there are tools of positive psychology, and I've done a couple of podcasts about this. Tools such as the Big Five personality assessment, which helps us really understand who we are, because frankly, a lot of us really don't know, and we have misguided thinkings about who we are. The VIA Strengths Finder, another tool that helps us identify our strengths, and when we're working through the things that we do well, we tend to do them better and have more confidence in what we're doing and feel that we're more capable and able, and that confidence is very empowering. The Japanese concept of ikigai, finding something to do that not only serves others, that you do well, but that you can make a living from. I found that a very useful concept. So I share all these tools with my clients as well, in addition to the financial tools.
That's excellent that you have such a holistic approach.
That's what it is. It's a holistic approach.
Now, as gray divorce is becoming a larger phenomenon, what are your thoughts on prenups specifically for couples going into their second or third marriages?
It's not a hard sell for somebody going through the second or third marriage. I wish I'd had one before my first marriage, but after my second marriage, I mean, it shouldn't be a hard sell. My divorce process was not pleasant. It went on for a very long time, and it cost a lot of money. So I knew that it was absolutely, without doubt, a given that if I were to get married again, which I did, that there would be a prenup. Because, I mean, I went into my second marriage thinking, this is never going to end, and hopefully it won't, because I've learned a lot of lessons. But if for whatever reason something happened, I wasn't going to go through that divorce process like I did the first time around. So it's an easier sell to somebody who's been divorced to get a prenup. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why second marriages and third marriages tend to end in divorce to even a greater extent, higher rate of divorce for second and third marriages, is I think probably people have prenups in those second marriages, so they know that the divorce is not going to be nearly as stressful as it was the first time around.
Now, you mentioned before that money is often a cause of divorce. From your experience, how can couples have those difficult conversations about money before it gets to the point of divorce?
Well, they should do it before they get married, really. But it's tricky because I don't know if you can change human nature. Especially you're typically younger when you get getting married for the first time, so you may not have some of these hard-earned life experiences. It's like trying to tell a teenager not to do something to a certain extent, trying to tell a young couple to get a prenup. It's there's prejudices against it. The idea that it's not romantic, that even that it will cause divorce or cause disagreements. But I try to have. I don't have these conversations often because I'm not often counseling younger people before marriage. It's usually older people going through divorce. But when the subject of prenups come up, I think I say, look, be honest with each other. Understand what your financial personality is, and know this before marriage. But many times people ignore the red flags, or don't want to delve into what could potentially be a red flag, because the pheromones are flying and everybody's so happy, and they don't want to have this discussion. But as a financial advisor, I say, look, does insurance cause that house to burn down? No. A prenup is not going to cause you to get a divorce. And if you look at the statistics, and of course, this is talking with a logical brain and when love and emotion are involved, people don't want to know about this stuff sometimes. But you do what you can as an advisor, and you say, look, 50% of marriages end in divorce. Hope yours is not that case. But if it is, and it happens 20 years from now, you're liable to have a lot more money than you do now. And you're probably not thinking about prenups now because you're just starting out in the world, or you've only been working for a few years. But by the time you're 40 or 50, you probably have a lot saved. And you want to lose it all to the legal process. Or if the marriage does break down, do you want to get the process done as quickly and without as least stressful a way as possible? And sometimes that'll resonate with more logically minded people who see the potential of a prenup as a financial planning tool. But in many cases, it's a hard sell for someone before their first marriage. But I like the idea that prenups can maybe approach it, and I've done this sometimes in discussions, approach it from the point of view of, hey, having an honest discussion about money might actually prevent divorce. It'll bring up things now that you can discuss and work through, and maybe you do that legally through a prenup, in which case that financial clarity can strengthen your marriage.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. I think that's a great way to look at it. Now, I want to thank you for your time today. And I also want to ask, if listeners are interested in connecting with you, what's the best way to reach you?
I would say first, look for my website, transcendretirement.net. Look for my podcast on all the podcast services, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. That's the Gray Divorce Podcast. You can always reach out to me via email at andrew@wiserdivorcesolutions.com. And, those are three probably best ways to find me.
Great. Thank you. Well, thank you so much. And I will make sure to include your contact information and websites in the episode notes so that people are able to get it from there.
Terrific, Libby. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you. That's our show, folks. Thank you for listening to Our Prenup Lawyer. Make sure to like and subscribe, and feel free to drop a comment below. Follow us on Instagram at Our Prenup Lawyer, and listen to us on Spotify, iHeart, Apple Podcasts, Audible, and watch us on YouTube. See you guys next time.